All right, guys, I hope you really enjoyed Chapter 4. This is this story is really, really going places when it comes to where we are. And we got to start in kind of a sad place, which is you thought JB was your dad.
Thought JB, my stepfather, was my real dad, yes. All of my life up until 13. Yeah.
I mean, essentially, that's like being told you're adopted.
Yeah.
Kind of.
No, 100%. It was, the scene was an 8th grade football game. It was the championship where I played on Holy Savior's football team, and we were playing a team called Visitation. And I scored 3 touchdowns, I guess. 2 or 3 touchdowns. And Jackie Bruni, our quarterback at the time, pitched it to me. I was running to the right. I planted my foot, and I threw it down the left sideline as Jamal Adams was breaking clear of the defender. And he leapt up, put his hand on the ball, bobbled it, lost his balance, regained his balance and composure, caught the ball, and ran it in for a touchdown. I'm telling you, man, it was like everybody went crazy. We won the game. My mother runs onto the field. I was super proud, super happy. I was making my family proud. And my mother comes up and she's like, hey, I want to introduce you to someone. And I said, okay, who? And it was the director of admissions for the high school. Now, we were playing on Bishop Kenrick at the time. I think it's changed names since. But we were playing on the Bishop Kenrick football field. And that was one of the local high schools. So my mom takes me over to the director of admissions, and he straight up tells me, Lenny, great game. Super proud of you, son. I know your family's financial situation, but we want you to play football here. And yes, he was offering me a full scholarship for high school. And I told him I needed to think about it because, since I was little, me and my friends in the neighborhood, we all used to play street ball together. And we had this clique, this group of guys, and we were going to go to the high school and kick ass all 4 years, and we were going to be undefeated, right? We had all these big dreams, and they weren't invited to go to that high school. So it was really difficult for me to make that decision, but I chose not to take him up on that offer, even though that offer might have been good for me.
That does come in a later chapter, and we are going to talk about that for sure, because I have plenty of thoughts on that decision. But where this chapter goes is we really start to see the dark side of living with JB.
Yeah.
So
you have a 7-year-old bartender.
That's exactly where I want to go.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts reflecting back on you being a 7-year-old bartender?
I was a hell of a bartender, man. I made that drink exactly the way he wanted it, man. It was heavy. It was heavier, more alcohol than grapefruit juice.
Yep.
A little bit of ice cubes, stir it around, lick the finger. You could, a 7-year-old tasting that alcohol. And if I was good, he'd let me have a sip.
Yep.
Now something that's not in the book, because I wanted to focus on myself, is that my sister Tara, right? It's my half-sister, right? We share the same mom, different dads. She made him drinks too.
She would have been 3 at the time.
Yeah, she helped. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
You have a line, when you believe you are the product of a man who is seemingly useless, it fucks with you.
Yeah. Because you believe that, that's a reflection of who you are. And when your brain is still forming, right, you're looking for external images to, relate to. And that's what was in front of me.
So right now, where we are as a society, the word narcissism is thrown around like far too often for what it actually represents. Do you believe that you were living with an actual narcissist, like a clinical narcissist?
I believe that I was living with a stepfather who may have had mental issues.
I think you kind of touch on it in the book, but is it resentment that you aren't his?
It was not resentment initially. And to touch base on the narcissism, when I was a kid in the basement, he had a beautiful, perfect train set up on this huge table that he played with. He worked at a hardware store and had accumulated a whole series of tools. He had everything. As a matter of fact, when I went to visit some of my family down in Georgia, one of my cousins, Jimmy Coates, he said, "Oh, GB said that I can use any of the tools." I said, "What?" He said, "Oh, he let me use any of the tools I wanted as long as I didn't break them and as long as I brought them back." See, my cousins used to make those cool little mini bikes, you know, cruise up and down the alley. And so they had a different relationship with him. But me, I was not allowed to play with that train set downstairs, and every one of his tools had his initials on them. So I believe, yes, that was a symptom of narcissism.
Yeah, the quote, narcissistic initials, really, I'm so glad you just said that because it was sticking out in my mind of like, that is a little
It's
much.
tendencies, right? Tendencies, right? I don't know if he could, be without diagnosis. I don't know if he could be exactly that, but as a child growing up, this is my experience, and what I saw were the tendencies, right? Initials on everything he owned. His little radio that he, would listen to out back, he's the only one that ever touches it. Why would you put your initials on some shit that only you touch?
Yeah. There's kind of like a jaw drop moment in this, and it's really these two words, lit cigarettes.
Oh, yeah, man. Oof. Thankful he didn't burn the house down.
How did he not?
We had some cheap carpet, man. That carpet put that cigarette out, man. The burn holes were incredible. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with my mother about it, and she was like, "Oh, well, the carpet wasn't cheap. I paid a lot of money for that carpet." And just to touch base on, diving deep, right? My mother may have at the time spent a lot of money on that carpet, but the life that I built for myself, I realized that a lot of money to her is not a lot of money to me. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that carpet literally put them cigarettes out. So how incredibly fine was that fabric, right? I don't think it was fine. Now, I'm a business person, right? I've started 12 separate companies from the ground up. I know how hard it is to start a company. I understand P&L, right? Profit and loss. So whatever carpet store she went to that jacked up that price for her to come in and pay more money than she should have, they should be ashamed of themselves, because now my mother believes she spent a lot of money for that damn carpet.
That carpet saved your life, though.
Saved my life, and I'm thankful for it.
That is an incredible part of this story that is like, again, it's almost like you're not supposed to be here.
Well, let me tell you another story that is not in the book. When I was 2.5, 3 years old, my parents got an apartment over on Walnut Street in Norristown. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. The bedrooms were on the 3rd floor. My room was in the back. I was 3 or 4 years old. I was playing with matches. And it was in the middle of the night. And I lit it, and it hit the mattress, and it went whoof. And it caught on fire. It caught on fire, and it was uncontrollable fire. And I started screaming. And my stepfather came in and put the fire out. And he saved my life. But the mattress was burnt up. And the image in the mattress looked like a lion to me. I said, look at the lion, look at the lion. Now, some people might think I'm lying, but I'm not. I'm not. So my stepfather saved my life from fire, but he also almost burnt the house down.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a shift here in the book where we are reintroduced. We've heard the name once before, but Nimmy Haim Tuggle?
Nimmy Tuggle.
Age 10, fight promoter.
Awesome dude. As a matter of fact, I think it was like 2 months ago, I went back to Norristown because my uncle had passed away. Stacy and Anthony Jackson, their father, John Steele. I went back for the viewing. I only had a little bit of time before I had to head back down to D.C. So I rented a car, drove out to Norristown real quick, went to the viewing, and I seen everyone, told them, gave them my condolences, and seeing a bunch of people, they did not expect me, right? Because I was only in Philly for 2 days. And that was the morning that I was leaving, so I just had to hurry. So on my way out, I saw Nimmy. I was like, yo, cousin. I haven't seen him for a long time. And I ran to the car, and I grabbed the book, right, because I brought a couple of extra books. I signed it to him, told him I loved him, and I gave it to him. And then I rolled out. So when I was a kid, Nimmy was more like an older brother to me. Nimmy was known around the neighborhood as a badass. Nobody fucked with Nimmy. He could fight. He could play ball, right? Taught me everything I know about football, basketball. As a matter of fact, here's a story real quick that's not in the book. We were playing the Chiefs, and it was at Stort Middlefield's grounds, or Stort Middle School. Yeah, Stort Middle School's grounds. And there was a guy named Tommy Drakeford who I kind of grew up with. He grew up on the other side of town, and he played for the Chiefs, and I played for the Cardinals. And we practiced this one play, right? It was like 44-something or another. So I get the ball, and this was before, vast athletic, talent, right? So my coach showed me what to do. I get the ball. I literally turn my body to the right. I take 2 steps that way. I turn to the left, and I run. And that was the play. And so I do that exactly how my coach tells me, and I see Tommy Drakeford. So we're head on. I move to the right. He moves to the right. I take off to the left. I'm gone. I'm down at the 5-yard line, and one of the Chiefs' defenders grabs my shirt, spins me around. My back is facing the goal line, and I'm backpedaling, trying to get in the end zone. This guy's pulling me with everything he has, and Nimmy is on the sideline saying, "Go, Lenny! Go, Lenny! Go, Lenny! Go, Lenny!" And I scored a touchdown. And so Nimmy has always been there for me, man. I love you, cousin.
Again, like with your grandfather, the introduction of Nimmy to us is a little unnerving.
To you.
Exactly. To the reader.
Yeah.
But very quickly, he shows his purpose in your story. But that comes at a price of you're throwing hands at 4 years old.
Yeah. That's, throwing hands at 4 years old. That's how I got this other scar, right? That's in the book.
The glass bottle of it all.
Yeah. So that was a tough, So when they read that, I just want you to know that it was a tough situation to, psychologically go through at 4 years old.
Well, when you're seeing red, literally, that's a rough image.
It's tough.
But you lived it. I just read it.
Yeah, it was tough. But that was many fights. That was one of many fights that Nimmy wanted me to partake in. Now, what's crazy is there was this one time It was in the book. I talk about my Uncle Dave telling me to stay clean, right? Because my mom drove me up to my grandparents for the day, and I would go out and I'd get dirty, and then my mom would pick me up. My Uncle Dave pulled me to the side and was like, "Look, these other kids that you play with all day, they can go home and change because they live here. You got to stay clean because you don't live here." And so this was one of those times when I was trying to stay clean, but I was hanging with Nimmy and a couple of other people from couple of other kids from the neighborhood. We went down to the Schuylkill River where there was a Tarzan swing, right? You swing out, you dive in or jump in the river. You walk back, climb up the cliff. It's a 15-foot cliff maybe. And, you do it again. So I'm walking down the street with Nimmy, happy to be with my cousin. We cross over the train tracks and we go down. We hit the woods. Next thing you know, we're at the Tarzan swing. I accidentally stepped on this dude's toe. I don't know who this dude is. I don't know his name. But I accidentally stepped on his toe. And he was like, woofing off. Motherfucker, what you doing? I was like, look, sorry. He's like, nah, fuck that. I looked at Nimmy, and just like you would, go get him, right? Just like you would do that, it was on. And the dude punched me. I punched him. We're wrestling around in picker bushes. That is not fun. That's pure agony and pain. We get out of the picker bushes. He and I are scuffling. Boom. We roll off the cliff into the water. I'm beating his ass. He's beating my ass. We're punching. He's punching. I'm punching. We punching. And I slip. And I go underwater. And he's holding me underwater. And I can't breathe. And I gave it everything I had. I came up out the water, couldn't really see him. And I, connected to his face, and he let me go. And I got up, and I walked up the 15-foot cliff. There's like little steps, that you make little imprints in the mud and it, you know what I mean? So I get up there, and I'm standing at the top, out of breath, soaking wet, clothes filthy, and all I could do is think of Uncle Dave. He's going to kill me because I'm dirty again.
So I have a question about Uncle Dave.
Yeah.
And you can choose to answer it or not. But Uncle Dave shows up in kind of a hero role. But there's also a line in here about your uncles essentially ruining Pop Pop's restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Was Uncle Dave part of that group?
I don't know if Uncle Dave was.
Because that's all that was on my mind.
Yeah. Can you imagine, being proud of your Pop before you really know what's going on? Pop owns a restaurant.
Yeah.
That sounds important, but it is important, right? So some of my uncles, and thank you for saying that, some of my uncles, and I don't know which, right? I could probably call my mom and ask her, but
on the next episode of the podcast.
Right. So some money would come in and they'd run in, boom, steal the prize, is what I say in the book.
Yeah.
And I used to wonder what it would have been like if that restaurant was successful. I say that perhaps maybe I wouldn't have been the first millionaire in my family. Right? It's generational at that point, right? If the restaurant would have done well, my uncles would have took it over and maybe handed it down to some of their kids, and we could have all, done our parts to make sure it was successful. But that did not happen. But Uncle Dave was one of my uncles that he was incredible. When I didn't have a bike and the neighborhood kids had a bike to ride on, it was kind of tough seeing all the kids jump on their bikes and just like head out for a nice ride. I had to sit on the steps. I didn't have a bike. Uncle Dave, he noticed that. He went around to all the back alleys, trash cans, junkyards, all that stuff, put together a bike for me, a misfit bike. And that bike was badass. That bike, I would jump off the ramps. I mean, it made me so proud to be, a nephew of someone who was resilient, right? Someone who was a curator of happiness, right? So he was something special in my life. On top of all that, though, Uncle Dave gave me haircuts, trimmed me up with the fade. He could have been an incredible barber. Free haircuts, that was the shit back then.
So this chapter is really chock full of stuff. And in an effort to kind of have the listeners of this get different perspective on it, the thing that I think is really important is this quote: "I fucking hated being poor." That's one. And then the other thing is you give a piece of advice here. If you lead with love, you'll find success faster. That almost seems like a mission statement. Mm-hmm. I will not be poor, and here's how I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Generically speaking, yes. In general, yes. You lead with love. You're bound to find your way. You're bound to find a rainbow. And people do business with people they like, right? So if you lead with love and not this cheap obsession with making money, right? That's the key, I believe, in home businesses, in small businesses, in medium-sized and large businesses, right? Because most corporate businesses have a mission statement. And to some degree, in some, variation, that should be in there, right? Shouldn't be this cheap obsession with money. Money is something that is a tool, right? When you lead with love, that's a true intention, right? And again, people do business with people they like. So yes, and I just feel like, my family in general were good people. We had a pretty good name, right? And my aunts and uncles were all solid people, and it makes me feel proud to be from the Tuggle side, right? Even though I have the Bazemore name, I'm not really that close to, anyone of the Bazemore clan, and the Coleman clan. I'm close with a couple of my cousins. Reggie Roberts is I'm closest with him on that side, but I'm not really tight with anyone other than the Tuggle family.
But you did have a good experience with your grandma Gertrude.
Oh, yeah. She was something else. She was something else with the grapes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she'd let me
$10?
$10
on the forehead.
That grass. She was special. And my great-grandmother, too. She would always sit on the steps. And when I would come in, and I would get a hug and a kiss from both of them. And my grandmother Gertrude, just to be clear to the people listening, was my stepdad's mother. And she never, ever, ever gave me one reason to believe that she was not my real grandmother. That was pure love. Lots of hugs, lots of kisses, lots of candy. And she'd ask me, can you cut my grass? And she'd give me $10, and some grapes. Now, in Norristown, some of the backyards had these green grapes, right? And I would eat them, and, man, they were sour. Mm-hmm. So I didn't like them. I tried not to let her know, but I'm sure my face told the story.
We talked about Dynasty a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. This is the chapter where you really go into it, but there's something very specific in this chapter that you see that I think kind of informs the rest of your life. Who is Richard Lawson to you?
Now or then?
Oh, good question. Then.
Richard Lawson back then was a character on Dynasty. He was a hardworking drill foreman, and he became rich on the show. Back then, he meant the world to me because I had never seen a black man on TV with that stature, with that determination and class, right? He was incredibly sophisticated and classy, or his character was. And I wanted him to be my father, right? Because I've never seen anything close to that. And what I was left with a stepfather and a biological father, there was no comparison. That's what I wanted or imagined a good black father was.
And this is where you start to build the dream. This is where you start to put the action plan of how you're going to walk, how you're going to... you have a line in here that's kind of about, I have to learn what it's going to be like to be a millionaire.
Yeah. When I become a millionaire.
Yeah.
And that's true. I started to, be cognizant of my actions, of my speech, of my ways of being, because I thought that, I had a pretty good shot at being a millionaire because I found that I was smart, right? I possessed ingenuity, right? You put me in any kind of situation, I can pretty much figure my way out of it. And I was incredibly athletic. And when I was a kid, I thought that football was my way out, right? I thought I'd get a football scholarship to college, and that would lead to the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You even have a line that's similar to that. It's towards the end. But I knew I sure as hell was going to be rich and that I would be getting out of Norristown.
Two things I knew, no doubt. I didn't know how. There's no way that I knew how, but I knew I would. Now, this is going to sound a little, weird, but I said to myself, worst case scenario, I could just hop on a plane and go to the Caribbean. I can go to Florida. I can go to California, right? And just with nothing, start my life over. Mm-hmm. That was the last resort, and I also had an idea if my life got so bad that I would just go get a job on one of those cruise lines and I would see the world that way, right? On one of those big cruise ships, right? I'd just get a job there and I'd cruise and I'd go to port to port, sleeping on the cruise ship, right? I'd save money, so...
I still think I might end up doing that.
Let's do it.
The last thing I kind of want to talk about in Chapter 4 is what is rich white people shit?
Rich white people shit. When we were growing up, the majority of people, that showed, substantial wealth were white people. You didn't really see black people, in Rolls Royces and stuff like that. So rich white people shit today is rich people shit, right? But back then, the majority of people were white. So we're talking equestrian centers, right? Horses and Rolls Royces and mansions and, happy hours with, your tuxedo on, just like you've seen in the old TV show Dynasty and the Carringtons. So that's what I was alluding to.
It is amazing that an 8-year-old boy watching TV would craft a life that would come
lead to this.
Yeah, it's wild.
I'm the black Richie Rich. No, kidding.
And that'll do it for Chapter 4. There's a lot more in there. We just couldn't get to it all. These chapters are dense, and there's so much wonderful story in here. So I hope you guys are reading along and enjoying it as much as I am.